I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
So we got canceled on ABC, and we went to Fox. And of course, the president of Fox got fired, and they replaced him with one of the worst men I've ever worked with. Just a terrible man. I can't mention his name, but it was John Matoyan. And we came on Fox after The Simpsons, and the ratings were huge. It was like, hey, you did it. You have a hit. But this new president of Fox, it wasn't his hit, and he hated the show. But so he just didn't publicize the critic. Every week he'd call me at the office. Well, I hated last night's show too.
He would call you to tell you
he'd say, I hated that show. And finally he says,
what would you say to him? Would you say, hey, thanks?
Yeah, I really don't remember. I mean, we were really flabbergasted. And I remember the great moment where he said, I'm going to show you why your show's terrible. And we go to his office, and he's sitting there with a bunch of his assistants and aides and secretaries, and he goes, now watch this episode. And he puts it in the tape player, and everybody starts laughing, and they're laughing all the way through, and he's going, why are you laughing? What's the matter with you? And he was just impossible.
Steve, can we get him on the phone right now? Where's Steve? Try to get him on the phone right now.
Okay, fine. Cool.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Stand Up New York! Please welcome the host of the James Altucher podcast. It's James Altucher and his guest today, Mike Reiss!
Hey, thanks for coming out in the rain.
Hello, everybody.
Mike must be really important. I'll find out how in my interview. I have no idea who he is now.
Maybe the lights are in my eyes. It looks like 600 people here. It's astounding.
Yeah, it is 600 people. Don't tell the actual number.
I got to tell you a story, which is I have my Simpsons talk. I've given it all over the world, and I got invited to speak in Moscow in front of 15,000 people, and I'm scared to death. It's in the old Moscow Olympic Stadium, and I come out, and the lights are just blazing at me, so I couldn't see a soul, and so I had no nerves at all, and I also couldn't hear a soul because nobody laughed at anything. Nobody laughed. And that night on the BBC, they reported Mike They said, Mike Reiss told great jokes to a gravely silent audience.
Or they could have said you bombed in Moscow. Or you bombed Moscow. Wait, so just to say, Mike Reiss was one of the co-founding writers of The Simpsons, and you were also showrunner seasons 3 and 4, and you still, to this day, work once a week, every Wednesday, including yesterday, in California on The Simpsons. I just wanted to get that out of the way. We'll get to The Simpsons in a second. But why didn't you before that, you worked for Johnny Carson, writing 60 jokes a day, including your famous Red Square Gorbachev joke. Why didn't you tell him that joke?
Wow. Yeah, silence is silence. Yeah, I could have told him anything. What was fun about that day, because I don't want your audience to think I bomb constantly, was the day started at like 11 in the morning, and I was speaking at 7 at night. And so I watched speaker after speaker come out and play to dead silence. So Richard Gere opened it up. He came out, Moscow, I love you. You're the greatest. Silence. And I go, oh, I'm doomed. And it was him and the Malcolm Gladwell, bombed. The ultimate fighting champion of the world, a local boy, bombed. So I knew nothing was going to happen. I knew I would get nothing out of these people, but they do love The Simpsons there. Oh, and just the finish of that anecdote was at the end of the event, we saw the organizer of the event, and we said, well, that was something. What do you say? And she goes, this has been a complete disaster. And she said, tomorrow we're tearing down the venue. I go, that's a bad review.
You destroyed the venue. But here's what I don't understand, because with 15,000 people, even if 10% are laughing, that's a lot of people laughing, 1,500.
Yeah, well, sure, make me feel worse about it. Yeah. Yes, math proves I sucked. It was just weird, but again, they were silent all day long. If you can't get them excited about Richard Gere, how are they going to get excited about some Jew they never heard of?
So just to kind of set the scene, we're talking about the paperback version of your book, Springfield Confidential.
That one, yeah.
Jokes, secrets, and outright lies from a lifetime writing for The Simpsons. Mike Reiss with Matthew Klickstein. Forward by Judd Apatow. Judd Apatow was a struggling stand-up comedian, sent you a spec script for The Simpsons and one other show, The Chris Elliott Show. And you didn't bring him onto The Simpsons, but you brought him onto The Critic, your later show that you did right after The Simpsons.
That is correct. And we just abused it. I mean, I first saw Judd when he was 20 years old doing stand-up comedy, and he was already there. He was great and funny and hilarious. And then we just kept kind of running into each other. And it's sort of when we said there's outright lies in the title. And Judd wrote this beautiful foreword, how I helped him out and read his spec script. He already was a TV producer at that time. He'd produced a bunch of comedy specials. He helped create and run the Ben Stiller Show, which is one of the great sketch shows ever. So he was not some struggling guy when he came to me, but it's a good story.
But he really attributes a lot, obviously, to The Critic, but then he was a writer on The Larry Sanders Show. You were a writer on It's Gary Shandling's Show. Mm-hmm. Did you get, and that was right before The Simpsons. Did you feel you got a lot of your comedy, sort of sitcom writing style from, like, what did you learn from Gary Shandling?
We learned a lot. It's a very funny thing in that no two shows, I think, share more DNA than It's Gary Shandling Show and The Simpsons.
So the lowest rated show at the time and the highest rated show.
Correct, yes. I mean, that was it. We found out, gee, what's the difference between these two shows? Oh, it's Gary Shandling. He just was not a popular performer. They didn't like this sensibility, live action. But it was really it was all the same writers, went right from one show to the next. And all these little tricks that we do on The Simpsons were on It's Gary Shandling Show first. The idea of doing a whole episode that's a parody of a movie. I'd never seen that before, but Gary Shandling did that, breaking into musical numbers. The show was experimental every single week, and the public hated it. But that was it. But they sort of liked it when they were cute and yellow and animated.
So, also, again, I mentioned earlier you were on Johnny Carson for a couple of years writing jokes. Did that put you in the mindset, like you had to write 60 jokes a day for
Correct.
Johnny Carson, which has got to exercise that muscle. You probably, at the beginning of that phase, were you able to write 60 jokes a day?
We were able to do it. Al Jean and I started out together, and our first TV writing job was a show called Not Necessarily the News.
On HBO?
On HBO, and you can see it on YouTube, and it was almost like a YouTube show. It was super fast little sketches and little bits intercutting the cast with news footage. You'd take the footage of Reagan and then cut an actor interviewing him. You see these tricks on Daily Show and that kind of thing now. But what was funny was that our first job, and we loved it, and Al and I would write sketch after sketch after sketch. Nothing had to be more than 30 seconds. And the staff they had hired who preceded us were a bunch of very talented 60s potheads. And they just smoked pot in the office all day, and they would put out one good sketch a day, and that seemed to be what the producers thought you could get out of a writer, one good sketch a day. And Al and I were churning out 10 mediocre sketches a day, and they loved the quantity of it.
And then I guess you took that quantity style.
Yeah.
And then even on The Simpsons, I think even actually Judd Apatow says running into you guys in a writing room, you're just sitting. One thing that's sort of a characteristic that you and Al have, your writing partner, is that you sit for 12 to 14 straight hours writing jokes, and there's just like some junk food there, and then you're just writing the whole time. At least that's Judd Apatow's observation.
It's correct. I mean, I don't deserve any honors for being able to sit in a chair all day. It's really easy. And in fact, I fly back and forth to LA every week, 6 hours there, 6 hours back. And people go, how do you do it? And the guys at work go, how do you do that every week? I go, it's what I do here. I sit for 6 hours, and every 3 hours someone puts food in front of me. It's exactly the same.
So one thing that I love about your career, and we've had this conversation before, but also reading it in the book, you seem really focused at every step of the way on the process versus the outcome. It's not like you joined The Simpsons thinking, boy, I'm going to win 4 primetime Emmys doing that foreshadowing. It's not like you had any, you guys thought the show was going to get canceled. You didn't even tell anybody about it because you thought the show was going to get canceled immediately, but you just wanted to have fun and do something crazy.
We wanted to have fun.
And you still do that.
And I still have fun. I still love going to work every single week. I love those guys. I laugh all day. One thing I learned writing the book, and I didn't think I'd learn anything from my own book, but at the end, I turned in the manuscript, and the publisher goes, "Where's the dirt? Where's the conflict?" And I go, "Oh, that's the trick. That's the secret of The Simpsons as much as anything. There's no conflict. Everybody gets along. Everybody is really nice. The writers, the animators, the actors, everyone's really nice." And I thought, oh, is that weird? And then I listened to Alan Alda's memoirs. And the same thing on MASH. Everybody was nice. And even Eric Idle has a really good memoir out right now. And sure enough, Monty Python, they just sailed through. People didn't fight. They weren't egotistical about the material. The other thing I learned from Eric Idle's book is they only cared about the writing. They cared so much about the writing, and then they didn't care who starred in the sketch. Nobody would say, I wrote that, I got to play that character. They would just write it and polish it and go, all right, who would be best? Who's best to play the tall, angry man? Oh, maybe John Cleese.
So that's interesting. Do you think in the Simpsons, whoever got like writing, you think that's why they had a fairly flat structure in terms of who the producers were? Like everybody was a producer, basically?
Everybody's a producer.
So nobody would have to fight for different titles per episode?
Oh, it's partly, I got to say, again, it wasn't part of the structure of the thing. And it's the only reason we have 47 producers on The Simpsons. 47 producers. I'm going to go on a sidebar here, which is, when you win an Emmy for a show, every producer gets an Emmy. And the Emmys changed the rules because of The Simpsons, where they said, if you win, we don't have enough statues. So it's only the top 15 producers now get an Emmy if we win, which we haven't in 20 years. But the point is, the only reason there's so many producers is everyone's worked there so long, and everybody just gets a little promotion every year. There's a little hierarchy, and we've all hit producer level. They just get along because they get along. Do you think is it because of personality, or how much does success breed getting along? Yeah, I think that's part of it. There's comfort. We know what we're writing. It's sort of what helped when the show started off. We were all friends first. We all knew each other. We all hung around. Again, I'll go back to the story. You sort of set it up, which was I was working on It's Gary Shandling show, the lowest rated show on TV, and Matt Groening calls me up and he says, we're turning The Simpsons, which were 1-minute cartoons, we're turning it into a show. Do you want to work here? And I said, why are you asking me? You don't know me. He says, I'm asking you because everyone else turned it down. And that was it. And so I got the job the way I got a wife.
You asked everyone.
Yeah, I wasn't the first choice, but I was available. And so I took this job, and it was just a handful of guys who said, well, this will be a fun summer gig. And we all took it, and we just had a ball that summer. And again, nobody thought anyone was ever going to watch this. So we said, well, let's throw in all these crazy jokes we'll never get to do anywhere else. And because we were making 13 episodes, but everyone was certain we're going to get canceled after 6 episodes. We knew we'd only get 6, so we said, we better pack it with jokes because this is our only chance, and let's change the credits every week because we can fit a few more jokes in there. So it was really just for fun, and we were sort of writing it for ourselves and for our friends. We said we can at least make our friends watch it.
So that frenzied attitude of like, let's just pack as many funny jokes in there and for our friends, so on, that kind of set the tone for the next 30 seasons. Because
I know, it's back-breaking.
The first few minutes, how many jokes would you say are packed into even the intro credits?
The opening credits, I think, have 7 jokes we change every week.
Does that include the couch gag?
It's the couch gag and the blackboard were the two. For years, we changed it. And then when the show went to high def a few years ago, Al Jean, who's just relentless. I mean, just the hard Al Jean, again, my former writing partner, who's now run the show for 20 years, is just a workhorse. And he goes, it's high def. We can fit more jokes in. So now we have a thing called a flyby, where before you even see the Simpsons name, you see one of our characters flying by in some contraption. We change a billboard every week. There's several more jokes we have to put in. So it's 7 new jokes every week. And you think of a show like Home Improvement, we have more jokes in our credits than they had in half a season. So
going on that one,
yeah.
After the 4th season, you were the showrunner for season 3 and season 4, and which means you were kind of in charge of every aspect of the production. You and Al Jean, and then you go off to do The Critic, another animation.
Good career move.
But,
yeah,
and great show. I love the show. But that was your first episode. That was like the lead into Home Improvement, which was like the highest rated show on television at the time. Do you think? And we'll skip around. We'll get back to The Simpsons. But I'm just curious, like after the first episode, which had something like 26 million viewers, some outrageous number compared to who watches TV now, and then the executive calls you up and says, I hope you have good publicity or whatever. He's like kind of trashing the show to you after such a stellar opening. What were you? And this was you were pouring your life into this show. This was your show, your baby. What was your initial reaction?
It's actually you're putting 2 stories together, which I should probably learn to do. When it was on
I should learn to not do it. I don't know.
Yeah, when it was on ABC, it started off on ABC. We had Home Improvement coming out after us. And, we were kind of trying to be a smart, zippy, irreverent show. And then, boom, you hit Home Improvement, the #1 show on TV. year after year. And we came on, we had great reviews, great ratings, and then 2 days later, my secretary walks in with a big box, and I go, "What's that?" And she goes, "That's hate mail." And we have 2 more boxes of it out in the hallway.
What did it say? Like, what did any of these letters say? Why would people write hate mail about a cartoon?
There was a scene.
It's like writing hate mail to Fred Flintstone.
I know, isn't that funny? They, I think in particular, in the pilot of The Critic, he sleeps with a woman on the first date, and the son walks in on them. I think that they really hated, but mostly they just hated, here's this kind of smart, cityfied, hip show, and then Home Improvement. They wanted more Home Improvement. They wanted something slow and easygoing, but they hated it. So again, we had predicted The Simpsons would get canceled after 6. The Critic got canceled after 6. The prediction, again, The Simpsons predicted it. We got canceled after 6. Our ratings, plummeted
You were
the second
predicting
week.
before your time.
Yeah. And so, ABC canceled the show. And when they were about to cancel the show, it was interesting. It was Bob Iger, who now runs Disney, who's now my boss once again. But I'm sitting with Bob Iger at ABC, and he goes, "Look at the ABC schedule. Where do you think The Critic belongs?" And I said, "It belongs on Fox after The Simpsons." and that was it. He was a wonderful man. He was nice. He was trying to help the show, but he just knew it was a terrible fit. And so so we got canceled on ABC, and we went to Fox. And the president of Fox bought the show. We were going on after The Simpsons. And during the year it took us to make more critics, of course, the president of Fox got fired, and they replaced him with one of the worst men I've ever worked with. Just a terrible man. I can't mention his name, but it was John Matoyan. And we came on Fox after The Simpsons, and the ratings were huge. And Fox had a problem for about 6 years trying to find a show that worked with The Simpsons. I think they tried 8 different shows, and nothing worked. Just the audience would watch The Simpsons and then bail and go somewhere else. Everyone who watched The Simpsons watched The Critic, and it was like, "Hey, you did it. You have a hit." But this new president of Fox, it wasn't his hit, and he hated the show. And so after that hit premiere, he called us up and said, "All right, you had a good week. Let's see how you do next week without publicity." And we go, "Why are you doing that? Why don't you want to publicize your hit?" And no one to this day can figure out what his rationale was. But so he just didn't publicize the show. Every week we'd put a new critic on. Every week he'd call me at the office. "Well, I hated last night's show too."
He would call you to tell you
He'd say, "I hated that show." And finally he says,
"What would you say to him? Would you say, 'Hey, thanks'?"
I really don't remember. I mean, we were really flabbergasted. And I remember the great moment where he said, "I'm going to show you why your show's terrible." And we go to his office, and he's sitting there with a bunch of his assistants and aides and secretaries, and he goes, "Now watch this episode." And he puts it in the tape player, and everybody starts laughing, and they're laughing all the way through, and he's going, "Why are you laughing? What's the matter with you?" And he was just impossible.
Steve, can we get him on the phone right now? Where's Steve? Try to get him on the phone right now.
Okay, fine.
So was there ever a point, like, again, you were so focused on process and being funny that moment and not thinking about outcomes, but here's, obviously you wanted a great outcome for this. Did you get depressed? Was there any point where you were like, "Oh man, I made a mistake. I left The Simpsons and this guy's a jerk"?
No, I really didn't. I didn't. I know Al did. And Al and I tried a few different things. And then after a while, we decided to part company very amicably. And he went right back to The Simpsons. And he never left again and has been running the show. We ran the show together for 2 years. And it was the worst job I ever had. It nearly killed me. We'd work 100-hour weeks, 51 weeks a year.
Because you're managing
every single aspect of it. Your main job was supervising the writing and the scripts. Somebody writes a Simpsons script, and then the staff sits together in a big room, and they go through it a line at a time. And we go through the scripts from top to bottom 8 complete times. just to get the script in shape, and then we read it out loud with the cast. So you've got to do that. You're supervising the writing. If you watch The Simpsons, every joke on the show is the result of 1 hour's work by 8 people. I did the math on it. So it's about 100 hours by 8 people working to get one script in shape. And so, so you've got to do that. Then you direct the actors. Then you supervise the animation and storyboards. And there's all kinds of stuff in an animated show you wouldn't even think you have to do. It's like the first time it rained on The Simpsons. We just put in a line. It is a rainy day in Springfield. And they immediately comes with, all right, what does Bart wear in the rain? Because they wear the same things every day. What does he wear? What does Marge wear? Does Marge have a tall umbrella to cover her hair? Does she have a bonnet? What does Homer wear? What does rain look like on The Simpsons? Is it yellow? Is it drops? Is it lines? It's everything has to be invented when you're doing a show. So we had to do that. I think I said I directed the actors. I had to edit the audio tracks, had to edit picture, supervise music and sound effects. It was just relentless. And the only thing I was trained to do was write. And so I had 50 other jobs when I was running the show, none of which I was trained for.
So you really just purely like writing the jokes and some of the plot points and the stories. That was what you loved. That was your fun.
I like to
as opposed
write.
to kind of rising up in the TV hierarchy.
There are people who love it, who love, this challenge and that challenge. I don't even like running the comedy room. I hate that, being the boss of comedy. I love to be a writer in a room full of writers just throwing out jokes. So in fact, when I returned to The Simpsons, I'd left for a few years, and I went back, and my conditions of returning, I said, I am not the boss. I said, whoever is in the room is my boss. I don't want to be the boss of comedy. So I walk in my first day, and it's me and a 22-year-old kid. It was his second week on the job, and I just go, all right, boss, what are we doing today?
And did he take the reins? Did he start ordering you around?
He quit pretty soon after that, yeah.
So kind of along those lines, fast forwarding to 2019, you were just writing on the staff of the Oscars for 2019, which is the first Oscars in 30 years without a host, like Kevin Hart quit. So you're writing without a host, you're writing basically when they're all staring at some kind of screen, all the presenters, all these great actors can't memorize any lines at all. And it's so obvious they're reading from something and it's all stilted. You were writing those. I
would write those. And, my job...
Well, why can't they act those? Why is it always so clear that they're reading from something?
It's funny.
The best actors in the world.
And they do. And the amazing thing is, they do have a rehearsal. And this, in fact, I wish they would televise this, because the day before the Oscars, all the stars come in, they run through the entire show, and they read off a randomly chosen name for a winner. And then it was sort of funny. They hire extras to come up and accept the award, and the extras have done their homework, and they give a long speech that's pretty good. And you go, I wish they were this good. But the point of this is, when they have this rehearsal, that's the Oscars you wish you saw, because they're all having a great time. Everybody shows up in jeans and sweatshirts and a baseball cap. They're smiling. They're having so much fun. And then Oscar night comes and they're in tuxes and everybody's stiff and not having any fun. But that was my favorite part of the process.
Given that there's this rehearsal before, this is the stupidest question in the world, but do they know who's going to win?
They don't know. No. They really do not know. And in fact, this again, you ask, what do you do with the Oscars? This is the kind of job I really hated. And you don't even think about this, which is when they announce, and the winner is so-and-so, it takes a minute for them to get to the stage, and you have to write something for the announcer to say while they're crossing, a minute of material, and you have to write it for every single nominee, even if you go, well, this guy's not going to win, but you still have to write a minute of material. But then you get to the super boring categories like Best Documentary Short, and those guys have terrible seats. They're way in the back, which means they have a 3-minute walk up to the stage, and you have to write 3 minutes of material about some guy from Burkina Faso who made a documentary short. You have to write for each one of them. It's just this huge amount of material that nobody's interested in, which mathematically 80% of it's going to will never get used.
So you're not going to take that job for 2020, or you will. You can't help yourself. I have a feeling.
What happened was I really was not enjoying the job, just because it was the Simpsons really spoiled me. Where if you do something good, they use it, and some rules of logic apply. And so every day I would come home and tell my wife, I'm quitting, and she goes, "You are not quitting because I'm going to the Oscars."
So if he gets offered the job next year, will you make him go?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to go again. I would love to go again. It was the best night
All right,
ever.
so you're committed. Oscars 2020.
I get it. It was very, very exciting Oscar night, and I was in the green room with all the actors. It was 80 famous movie stars and me, and I was so nervous. I go up to the bar to get a drink, and the bartender was Wolfgang Puck. So everybody was somebody, and I'm there all night, and I will tell you, it's just kind of funny insight. Famous actors are live wires. At least when you put them in a room together, every one of them was the life of the party. Every single one. Someone like Javier Bardem, you don't think of him as the class clown. He was a nut. And what's the guy? Who's the Bob Fosse guy? Sam Rockwell, nuts. He was like Woody Woodpecker. And it was just funny to see all of these guys jammed in one room having so much fun together. Again, it was like the rehearsal. They really enjoy each other's company. They're really outgoing people. The only person who talked to me all night was Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts said, "Sit down, you're blocking the TV." Now I'm definitely not getting invited back next year.
So, okay, I want to ask a trivia question to the audience, because this astounded me. I don't know anything about the process of animation. How many individual drawings do you think were done to create one of those first episodes of The Simpsons before there was computer art and stuff like that? How exact number of thousands?
22 times 22 minutes times 24 times. 24 frames a second. 22 minutes, 60 seconds per minute, so that many.
I'm gonna believe you. So it's 24,000.
24,000.
And here's what I don't
drawings.
understand. This is how naive I am. Who came up with the idea that, hey, let's make 24,000 drawings and make a TV show instead of just filming a bunch of people in a room? Oh, he's got 31,000.
31. I've heard that number too. I mean, yeah, it's different. For years I heard it was 32,000. Partly we're not 22 minutes anymore. Now we're 20 minutes. I know it's 24,000 hand-drawn drawings every week, and for 15 years every drawing was hand-painted, and you'd walk into the studio and you would see a wall of buckets of yellow paint because we needed so much yellow in the show.
So other than like the salaries of the actors, like what makes that a better process to do than filming, say, Friends or Seinfeld, where it's just like one room with a bunch of friends?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is why TV went 20 years without an animated show on it. It didn't make sense.
Between Flintstones and
The Simpsons, it hadn't been tried again, to the point where when the show was starting up, nobody knew how to do it. We literally didn't know the process, and everyone who knew the process from the Flintstones was dead. And so we really just reinvented it. And then having reinvented it, The Simpsons still operates on 1991 technology. It's like, it works. Yes, we could do everything with computers much faster and easier, but we go, that's not how we do it. We've always done it this way. There's a story I tell in the book where the show was and continues to be hand-drawn, and for 10 or 15 years, it was hand-painted, and that was the huge part of the job. And you can imagine how hard that is if you ever painted a car or something, do all that painting. And the producers of the show would say, we can do the painting in computer. We don't have to go through this step. And the animator said no. They said, people will notice. The show will lose warmth and character. And so we did an experiment. We experimented with the entire American public where we said, we're going to do one episode, computer painted. We won't tell anyone what it is. And if one person in America calls up and said, what the hell was with last night's show? We'll never do that again. And we did it. For the trivia buffs, it's the episode where the Simpsons get a tennis court and Pete Sampras was on the show. And that was it. That was computer painted. Nobody noticed. And so you would have thought, all right, so automatically we're computer paint from here on in. But no, it took us another 5 years before we did it that way.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
So I'm going to say you now have segued into an interesting story, which is all your guests that you've had on The Simpsons, but most notably a recent controversy, which is the Michael Jackson one. I have to ask because now it's been pulled from the sort of rotating Simpsons that you can get on TV since the documentary. You wrote that episode.
I did write that episode.
And it's a very funny episode. It's Homer is roommates in a mental institution with a guy who thinks he's Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson plays that voice.
That's correct. And yes, it was pulled from syndication, and last year alone, I earned $14 from that episode. So I'm really going to miss that money. And it's funny. In fact, it's of the 10 Simpsons I wrote, I've worked on all 650, but the 10 I wrote the script and had my name on them, that's my favorite. I thought it came out the best. There seems to be a demarcation. The fans go, don't pull that from syndication, and we get it, except for the people who've seen the 4-hour documentary, which I have not seen. But they go, if you see this documentary, you say, gee, we can't show this anymore. But it came out great. It was Michael Jackson. This is long before there were any allegations about him. He was at the peak of his stardom. This was right between Thriller and Bad. He called The Simpsons, said, I want to be on your show. And we said, great. We worked out this idea. And we're meeting with him. And he said, I could write an original song for the episode. And Matt Groening goes, oh, you don't have to do that. And he goes, no, really, be no problem. And Matt's going, really, Michael, don't bother. And we're going, shut up, Matt. And so he wrote the Lisa, It's Your Birthday, the song that ends that episode. He was a pleasure to deal with. He was such a nice guy. The interesting thing is he was big. He was big and buff. It was this horrible realization that Michael Jackson could kick your ass. He was a big, buff guy and friendly, shook everyone's hands. There was no real weirdness about the guy until we're recording the episode. Now, I'd been to rehearsals with him. We were at rehearsals at his manager's house, a guy named Sandy Gallen, who represented, in the 80s, represented Michael Jackson, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, and Barbra Streisand. And we're in his house, and Sandy Gallen goes, I haven't been in every room of my house yet. We go, wow, you're rich. And so I'm at rehearsals with Michael, and he acted, and he sang. He's singing Ben and Thriller 3 feet from me. It was magic. So then we get to the recording, and we do all Michael's acting first, and he's terrible. He cannot act. And James L. Brooks, an Oscar-winning director, came in to direct Michael, and couldn't get anything great out of him. But we go, well, once Michael sings, this'll make the show. And when it came time to sing, Michael goes, Kip, could you come in here? And this shrimpy little white guy walks in named Kip Lennon. And we go, who's this? And he goes, this is my authorized sound-alike. And Michael just, and he stood 2 feet away while Kip Lennon did all the singing you hear in that episode and sang, Lisa, it's your birthday, everything you hear. And Michael's just laughing and laughing. And we said, Michael, why are you doing this? And he said, it's a joke on my brothers. And if that was the weirdest thing Michael Jackson ever did, that show would still be on the air.
So, do you know what the joke was he was doing on his brothers?
No, I'm not going to get into the mind of Michael Jackson. No, that's a dangerous place to be. No, I don't know what he was. Folks, you heard it here first. Michael Jackson was a weird guy.
I don't think this is the first place they've heard it. So, okay, in terms of the structure of like a show, and you guys were all funny, you're in a writer's room. I never understood the process. Like, is the more funny people the better? Like throwing jokes at something, or if one person was assigned, hey, you write this one, would that what's a better process?
The process works. The Simpsons is written that way. Somebody writes the script, and then 6-8 people sit around going through a line at a time, just going, let's make it better. Can we make this better? And it's so democratic. You're just sitting there throwing out jokes, and if you make the room laugh, all right, that line goes in.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's say you see a line. Let's say you personally saw a line. What's an example where you're like, I think I can make this better, where you made the line better?
I don't know. I need time for that. But, all right, the truth is I've never made anything better. I can't think of it. I can't think of a good line off the bat. But that's it. That's what I do. I sit there and just fire off jokes. So again, it's what you're talking about with Johnny Carson. It's as much quantity and endurance. And, you all know the stories of comedians who live hard lives and take drugs and stay up all night. A TV writer can't do any of that. I mean, our drug is 8 hours sleep. Everyone has to get a good night's sleep because it's a marathon every single day. You got to be sharp at 10 in the morning, and you got to be sharp at 2 in the morning, because very often the days go that way. And virtually every show is done that way. I mean, The Simpsons, you can imagine, this is a gang effort, but something like Frasier, a show I liked that was so polished and intricately plotted. Same thing, it's just a bunch of Jews sitting at a table.
From Harvard.
Yeah.
I think that's true, actually. I think all the showrunners of Frasier were always from Harvard.
There's a lot of Harvard people doing a lot of stuff. All the late night shows.
Just like The Simpsons?
What?
Just like...
Half the Simpsons writers, all the Futurama writers, the head writers on every single late night show. There was a time, I guess, what was it, Letterman up against Leno. They go, who will win the late night wars? And it's like, it doesn't matter. They're all being written by the same 6 Harvard guys. And The Daily Show, every year for the Emmys. What I like is, it'd be terrible if Harvard guys were just this closed network running, sort of monopolizing TV. But they do the good shows. Every year, all the Emmy-nominated sitcoms are run and often created by these Harvard Lampoon guys. None of this should make you think Harvard is a funny place. It is not.
But it does show that, like, you got the call one day, hey, from the Harvard Lampoon, hey, we've got this guy who we think you should look at. You looked at him, you hired him at The Simpsons, and the rest is history.
Right, it was Conan O'Brien. I mean, even for a humor magazine that had been around 140 years, they called me once in New York. They said, we've got this guy here. We've never seen anything quite like him. And it was Conan, and he was 18 and fully formed. The nut you see on TV every night, that was what he was like when he was 18, and that's what he was like at The Simpsons from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning.
Like, what do you think set him apart? Like, what did you notice that made him a little different than even the funniest people you knew?
He's so fast and so funny, and just improvises on himself. There's a level of performance he brings to his comedy all the time, where he's doing the jokes and then commenting on the jokes, and then he's pretending to be another guy criticizing the jokes, and just spinning off, the way it's like improv, only funny. And but that was it. He would just start telling a story, or I'll tell you a funny story. Or it's not a funny story, but it's an instructive
We'll
story.
decide.
Okay.
We'll decide.
For my birthday, my sister gave me a voice changer. It was a little bullhorn, and you would talk into it, and it could make you sound like a baby, or it could make you sound like a robot. 2 settings, and because what else is there? And so I brought it to work, and we're all fiddling with this thing, and none of it was very funny. And then Conan picks it up, and he's doing the shtick we're all doing. Hey, here's the baby and the robot, and they live together. And he's improvising this sitcom about a baby and a robot living together. But then he did something none of us ever thought of. Is the baby goes, hey, look who's at the door. It's Conan O'Brien. And then Conan made himself a third character, like the wacky neighbor in the robot baby sitcom. And I go, that was sort of great. I said, wow, none of us thought to do that, to add ourselves into the show.
It's interesting because a lot of times interviewing, let's say, stand-up comedians, they say, oh, it takes 10 years, 15 years before you start to, really be funny on stage. And it seems like with the comedy writing for TV, you guys, that muscle just gets quickly developed. You start writing 60 jokes a day, then you're writing for It's Gary Shandling, then you make the best, animated sitcom of all time.
It is true. I wish I could say there was a level of skill and practice.
Do you find that you got better over time?
No, I really don't. When The Simpsons started, again, we just took who we could get for the show. And not one, except for Al Jean and myself, the other 6 writers on the show had never written a TV script before. They'd never written a half hour. So a lot of them had written jokes. Some had written sketches, which are 8 minutes. Nobody had written a script before. And everybody's first script, right off the bat was great and, became these famous episodes. So, it ain't brain surgery. It's just not that hard. All the people we're talking about, including me, they didn't study it. They never read a book. They didn't think they were going to go into this. They didn't take writing courses in college. All we did is we sat on our butts and watched TV all day long. And we weren't studying it. We just liked TV. I liked TV. I used to watch 8 hours of TV every day. And my mom would go, where's all this TV going to get you? And 10 years later, hey, look at me. I'm earning more than Dad, and he's a doctor. So
with 30 seasons in now, and with, I don't know, it's like 20 episodes, 22 episodes a season.
22 a year, yeah.
And obviously, I apologize for asking a question you must have been asked a million times before, but how do you keep coming up with new, fresh stories?
The big trick we have now is we have a lot of writers. There's a lot of guys like me who work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, but we just have a lot of minds working on it. We have about 20 writers, and we do about 20 episodes a year. So every writer just has to come in with one really great, fresh idea. And if someone comes in with a great concept, then we start the machinery going. And then the jokes come and the characters come. We've got so many people to deal with, but someone's just got to come in with a fresh area.
But how does it like, you must hear all these pitches and you say, oh no, we did that. Because there's only, I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe there are only so many skeletons of plots and everything's just kind of riffs off these basic skeletons. I don't know.
It is true. We do it, we can plug different characters into what is a venerable old story. And yeah, by season 7, I think it was, every single member of the Simpsons family had been to jail. Everyone's been to jail. Everyone's had a crush on they could possibly have a crush on. We do a travel episode every year. Simpsons go somewhere and do something. And we're running out of countries. We're running out of countries to send them to. So I don't know what we'll do about that. So we have a couple of formulas and that kind of thing, but it's hard. And the hardest thing about it is the fans know the show. They know the show better than us, and they love to bust us on something. And the famous case was we did an episode just 2 years ago where Homer was smuggling snakes. Now, mind you, clearly you've been through all the normal ideas when you get to an episode about Homer smuggling snakes. And we put that on the air and go, well, you don't see that too often. And one of the fans on the website goes, you had Homer smuggling beer on another episode. And it's like, all right. And then I looked it up, and it was 22 years between smuggling beer and smuggling snakes. 22 years, and the guy who was complaining was only 14 years old.
So, it reminds me, though, also of you have that one episode, which is now a famous episode, where Spark goes into the future, and Lisa is president, but she's dealing with balancing a budget caused by the budget mess is caused by the former president, President Trump.
Correct.
And this was what year was that episode?
That was the year 2000, and so it was 16 years later. Trump was elected, and I got it again.
Do you think he got inspiration from that show?
Oh, well, it's typical where they go, "How do the Simpsons do it? They're crazy ideas." Well, Trump had actually been mulling a run for president. And in fact, the original joke was President Depp. We just needed this idea. Who is the dumbest person? That was the setup to the joke. Who's the worst possible guy to be president? And the joke at the time was President Depp. And it was partly we watched it in rough animation. Go, Depp, you don't hear it. You don't know what it. And so someone said President Trump, and everyone goes, all right, good enough, stuck it in the show. So 16 years later, Trump is elected president, and we at The Simpsons had no recollection of this. Again, we needed our eagle-eyed fans to go, no, you predicted this 16 years ago. It was like, what? And it shows you about the ego of The Simpsons writers. Nobody even pretends they're the one who thought of the joke. Nobody on the staff knows who thought of President Trump and pitched that as a joke. And that's something, you could dine out on that forever. But again, it's just something I've learned about comedy is if you keep saying enough stupid things, sooner or later, some of them will come true.
So post Simpsons and post, all these shows, and you've also written like 18 children's books, right?
Yep.
And but you also write a lot of jokes for news people or like the Oscars, where you're hired specifically to write jokes. Is there a process you go through? Like, is there kind of, do you think to yourself premise, punchline, or are you just thinking like wacky stuff?
I just talk to myself. It's just that it's a long, and my life is an internal cocktail party where I'm always thinking, oh, what's something funny I can say here? And I'm talking to myself thinking, oh, what would I say? And unlike life, you get a second chance. Oh, maybe I'd say this. I like it. I like crafting jokes, but once I make them, I don't care. I don't care if they go out on TV or I just like having them out of my head.
So like if Al Roker calls you and says, hey, I'm meeting the Pope,
right?
What could I say? What would you, like, how do you start thinking about that?
Yeah.
Do you pretend to be Al Roker and meeting the Pope, or?
It was just, can I tell? I'll tell the whole story. It was, I met a priest at a party, and he said to me, you want to see the Pope's app? And I said, sure, because I thought he said ass. But the Pope had an app called Joke with the Pope, and every day a celebrity would tell a joke to the Pope. And they said, this is going to benefit a charity in Venezuela, an orphanage in Venezuela. And I go, how? And they never explained it. And soon enough, the charity shut down because I guess all the orphans died. But so that was it. Every day a celebrity tells a joke to the Pope. So one night at midnight, I get a call from this priest, and he says, we need a joke for Al Roker to tell the Pope, and it's got to be about the weather and religion, and it's got to be clean. I'll call you back in an hour. And it's like, well, this is what I do. I like to do that. If I wasn't doing that, I'd be doing Sudoku or something. It's just the same thing. Just something to think about. So you just think, oh, weather and what's going on and religion. It's all, I mean, I hate to break it down because I don't think this way, but I think the general process is Venn diagrams. Religion, what goes with religion, what goes with weather, what has an overlap. I mean, that's how I wrote the joke. And the joke sucked, but, you know, it was free and it was midnight. And the joke was, Al Roker said, the drought is so bad in the Napa Valley that the Pope went to the Napa Valley to turn the wine into water. Thank you for your respectful silence.
No, that was good. That's good.
It's a good, you know, it's a joke. A lot of times things just aren't quite jokes. I go, well, that's a joke. It fits every qualification of a joke except being entertaining.
No, it's entertaining. I disagree with you, but
okay.
You've had the ideal job for you for the past, I don't know, 35 years.
35 years, yeah.
And someone listening to this, you know, they're probably thinking, oh, he's so lucky and it's so fun. Like, how does someone start thinking about their own careers? Their parents are saying, oh, be a lawyer, be a doctor. You know, how did you fine-tune that career muscle so that you chose the right path for yourself?
It was really all I was good for. I mean, what I thought I would be was like what I think a lot of guys like me do, which is they become funny lawyers and lawyers who get a lot of laughs in court, and then the client goes to death row. And that was what I thought. I'd never met anyone in show business. I didn't think it would be my career, and that was it. I was writing for the College Humor magazine, and somebody at National Lampoon magazine read my stuff and hired me there, and then someone in Hollywood read my stuff in National Lampoon, hired me there. I just bounced along, and in fact, it's career advice for anybody is there are people who are ambitious and have big visions and plans, and then there's these kind of schmucks like me who just say yes to anything that comes along. You can go pretty far just by never turning anything down.
But saying yes in the direction of something you love to do. Like you didn't say yes to a bar exam, for instance.
Right. Yeah, but if they had asked me take the bar exam, someone said, oh, this might be fun. I'd do that too. I just say yes to stuff. You can go a long way that way. And mind you, I mean, there's something wrong with me. I do this for a living. There's something kind of busted in my head. But okay, that's a job now. It didn't used to be a job to pay somebody. You know, there was one jester in the court, and that was it. And everybody else was dying of the plague. And so that was it. I can make jokes. I can't really do much else. And thank God it's a job. I'm the luckiest man in the world.
Except you could write children's books, movies, TV shows. This book, Springfield Confidential, which has just come out in paperback, and I encourage everyone to get it.
Yes, all you cheapskates.
So many great stories.
Yeah.
And Mike Reiss, thanks once again for coming on the podcast.
I love it here. Thank you. Thanks.
Anytime.
So much fun. It always goes so fast. Thank you.
Thanks.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.